Welcome to NeuroPower Talks, where we don't deal in wishful thinking, we deal in neuroscience. And today, I'm going to reveal one brain habit that has the power to rewire your neural circuitry, reshape your reality, and unlock parts of you that have been dormant for far too long. Because your brain is not a fixed organ. It's not a stone tablet with your story already carved into it. It's a living, breathing network of change. And every single day, it asks you one question: oh, what do you choose to reinforce today? Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on what you repeatedly do, think, and feel. But there's one habit, one mental ritual, that acts as a master key to this entire process. Ignore it, and you stay stuck. Use it, and your life begins to recalibrate in ways that feel almost supernatural. This isn't about hacks. This is about harnessing your biology. This is about activating your prefrontal cortex, regulating your limbic system, and flipping the switch on emotional reactivity. It's about turning off autopilot and stepping into intentional, high-performance living. So if you've ever felt like your life is looping, like your thoughts are rerounds of the same old fears, doubts, and limitations, I want you to lean in, because by the end of this episode, you won't just understand the habit, you'll embody it. You'll be practicing it. And your brain, it will already be changing. Are you ready to tap into your neuropower? Are you ready to become the architect of your mind instead of a prisoner of your patterns? Let's begin. Let me ask you something. What do you rehearse in your mind every single day? Because whether you realize it or not, you are rehearsing something. Every doubt you entertain, every moment of hesitation, every time you picture the worst case scenario before the best. Every time you replay a failure, a heartbreak, a betrayal, again and again like a broken record, that is mental rehearsal, and your brain is listening passively, not occasionally, but with intensity, with allegiance, with loyalty, because your brain, at its core, is a pattern-recognizing, prediction-making, belief-anchoring organ. It is not loyal to truth. It is loyal to repetition. It is not bound by facts. It is bound by focus. So the question is not whether you're mentally rehearsing. The question is, what are you training your brain to believe is real? This isn't theory. This isn't self-help fluff. This is neuroscience. This is physiology. This is your neurobiology responding to repeated mental input the same way a muscle responds to physical resistance. You lift a dumbbell again and again, the bicep grows stronger. You lift a thought again and again, and the neural circuit around that thought becomes dominant. That's neuroplasticity. That is the architecture of change. That is your power, and that is your responsibility. Mental rehearsal is not about hoping for something better. It's about conditioning your mind to expect it, to prepare for it, to identify it, to act on it. And when done with consistency, with intention, with emotional intensity, it rewires your brain, reshapes the neural map of who you think you are, what you believe is possible, and how you show up in the world. Let me be clear, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your neural programming. If your inner rehearsal is filled with hesitation, with smallness, with fear, your life will mirror that. But if you wake up each day and mentally rehearse your highest identity, if you close your eyes and see the version of you that is courageous, clear, capable, and you repeat that, feel that, embody that, your brain begins to forge new connections, build stronger circuits, and shift into that new pattern. That's not manifestation. That's neuroscience. On NeuroPower Talks, we talk about this often. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and a real one. That's not just poetic. That's scientific. When you mentally rehearse walking into a boardroom with unshakable confidence, when you visualize having that difficult conversation with calm, assertive presence, when you rehearse standing on stage and delivering your message with fire in your voice and purpose in your chest, your brain begins to fire the exact same neurons as if you were living it out right now. And every time you do that, you lay down a thicker coating of myelin around those circuits. That myelin is what makes those circuits faster, stronger, more automatic, just like muscle memory, just like training. Because it is training, that is what mental rehearsal doesn't. It moves your potential from theory to embodiment. Do you understand how powerful that is? This is not about wishing. This is not about waiting. This is about building your future like an architect designs a cathedral. First in vision, then in structure, and finally in stone. I've worked with world-class CEOs, elite athletes, top creatives, groundbreaking scientists. They all have one thing in common. They mentally rehearse who they want to be before the world ever sees it. Because you cannot outperform your self-image. You cannot speak confidently if your brain is rehearsing silence. You cannot lead boldly if your mind is rehearsing invisibility. You cannot change your life if your thoughts are rehearsing your limitations. You want to change your life? Stop trying to change your life. Start changing your rehearsal. Every morning before the chaos of the world comes before emails, before news, before distractions hijack your mental energy, you sit, you close your eyes, and you train, you rehearse your power, you rehearse your clarity, you rehearse yourself doing the exact thing that scares you. But in your mind, you are composed, you are prepared, you are focused. That's how you break fear's hold. That's how you rewire trauma. That's how you train your brain to recognize the person you are becoming, not the person you've been. Let me speak directly to the part of you that's doubting this. You might be thinking, but I've tried before. I've failed too many times. My mind is chaotic. I can't focus that long. My life is too messy. I can't sit still for 5 minutes, let alone visualize anything. Let me tell you, that is your current wiring talking. That is your old rehearsal defending its position. That is not who you are. That is who you've practiced being. But hear me now. Neurons that fire together, wire together, and neurons that no longer fire fade away. Which means every time you choose to rehearse something different, something bolder, something higher, you are silencing the old voice. You are dimming the old identity, and you are stepping into the architecture of your future self. This is not a gimmick. This is a discipline, a commitment, a brain habit that will challenge you because it will confront every belief that says you're not enough, not ready, not capable. But every time you face that resistance and keep rehearsing, you win. You win back ownership of your mind. You win back clarity of vision. You win back the ability to decide, this is who I am and this is what I'm here to do. And when your brain gets that message and gets it repeatedly, it adapts, it sharpens, it prepares, it starts filtering the world differently. It tunes into people, opportunities, decisions, and resources that align with your internal rehearsal. Why? Because what you mentally rehearse becomes what your brain scans for. It's not magic, it's mechanics, biology, focus. But if your inner world is left to default, if you don't train your mental rehearsal with precision and purpose, then your brain will default to survival. It will rehearse fear, it will rehearse scarcity, it will rehearse, what if I fail, instead of, what if I fly? And that rehearsal becomes the reality you live in. You see, most people are living out a script they never consciously wrote. A story rehearsed into them by parents, by teachers, by trauma, by culture. And now that script is running automatically. But what if you could interrupt the script? What if you could say, no, I will not rehearse that anymore. What if you could look your old beliefs in the eye and say, I honor you. I understand why you formed. But I am not rehearsing you today. And then shift into courage, shift to action, shift into belief, shift into a new neurological baseline. Because every time you rehearse a higher version of yourself, you give your brain a new path to walk. And the more you walk it, the deeper it becomes, until eventually that path becomes your default. That's the goal, not just to rehearse it, but to become it, until the person you once had to imagine is the person you now wake up and see in the mirror, until the scenario you once had to mentally picture is the life you now get to live, until the strength you once only practiced in your mind becomes the strength you carry into every room, every challenge, every storm. This is what mental rehearsal trains you for. It doesn't just prepare you for the moment. It makes you the moment. It rewires your physiology for presence. It rewires your reflexes for courage. It rewires your perception for abundance. And I'm telling you right now, you don't need perfect focus. You don't need mystical talent. You don't need hours of meditation or access to gurus. You need 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes of showing up to yourself, 5 minutes of mentally rehearsing what greatness looks like through your own eyes. And if you can hold that rehearsal, even with doubt whispering, even with chaos swirling, even with fear clawing at your resolve, then something inside you begins to shift quietly, subtly, irreversibly, because you're not just thinking differently, you're becoming different. And that is how you begin to rewire your life. That is how, let me speak directly to the deepest truth hiding inside you right now. You are not living your potential. Not because you're not smart enough. Not because you're not capable enough. Not because you lack resources or support or luck. But because your brain is believing a version of life you never consciously chose. And it's believing it because you keep imagining it. Over and over and over again. Listen to me. Your brain is not wired to reflect reality. It is wired to respond to repetition, to the stories you rehearse, to the images you replay, to the narrative you feed it, whether consciously or unconsciously. And the more often you imagine something, whether it's a dream or a nightmare, confidence or catastrophe, success or failure, your brain starts to accept the image as fact, as identity, as inevitability. Your brain believes what you repeatedly imagine. Let that truth sink in. Not gently, not passively. Let it hit you like a wave. Let it shake you awake, because some of you have been imprisoning yourselves with your imagination, not intentionally, but consistently. You've been imagining worst case scenarios for so long. Your nervous system now lives in a state of threat. You've been replaying every rejection, every betrayal, every failure until your brain wires those memories as prophecy. You've been picturing defeat, even as you pursue your dreams. And your brain, ever loyal to your images, begins to sabotage you before life even gets the chance. And you call it being realistic. You call it not getting your hopes up. You call it just preparing for the worst. But I'm here to tell you, on this platform, on NeuroPower Talks, in this moment that may very well be the line in the sand of your life, your imagination is not neutral. It's either constructing your liberation, or it is quietly cementing your limitation. You don't believe you'll win because you've imagined losing more vividly than victory. Resources that I had in me. You don't believe you're worthy because you've imagined rejection more often than belonging. You don't feel powerful because you've imagined being small in every critical moment your future needed you to rise, and it's not your fault. But it is now your responsibility, because now you know the truth. The same imagination that has built your fear can be harnessed to build your future. The same mental rehearsal that's been stuck in trauma can be recalibrated to picture triumph. The same brain that believed you were broken can be rewired to believe you are becoming, because the science is clear. Whatever you imagine with emotion and repetition, your brain encodes as truth. It doesn't stop to ask, is this helpful? Is this empowering? Is this taking them forward? No, your brain simply records the dominant images you feed it, then begins shaping your emotions, your perceptions, and your behaviors around those images. It's like GPS. You type in the coordinates even if they lead to a dead end. Your brain obeys. And so I ask you now, what directions are you giving it? What vision do you hold when you wake up? What scenes play in your mind when you close your eyes? What internal movies are you playing on repeat as you walk into meetings, conversations, decisions, relationships, because your brain is listening? And more than that, it's building. Every image you hold, especially when charged with emotion, is an instruction to your nervous systeming. Prepare for this. Expect this. Respond as if this is already real. This is why elite performers, from Olympic champions to Fortune 500 leaders, rehearse their wins before they win. They don't wait for success to show up before they believe it. They imprint it on the mind. They inject it into their emotional system. They carve it into their identity with imagery so sharp, so visceral, so alive that the body begins to believe it's already happened. And once the body believes it, it stops hesitating. It stops resisting. It stops self-sabotaging. It starts aligning with what the mind is projecting. That's not philosophy. That's biology. Now hear me. If you were raised in environments that constantly rehearsed fear, if you were conditioned in homes or systems that imagined the worst, that expected pain, that forecasted failure, then your default imagery is survival. Your reflex is hesitation. Your expectation is disappointment. But that wiring is not permanent. That mental movie can be changed. And you change it by consciously imagining a future so vivid, so detailed, so emotionally compelling, that your brain begins to say, this is where we're going. Because again, your brain doesn't choose what's most true. It chooses what's most rehearsed, which means the key to transforming your life is not just effort. It's not even motivation. It is deliberate mental design. It is the discipline of imagery. It is the daily, committed, unshakable act of closing your eyes and imagining in high definition who you are becoming, even when it feels like a lie, especially when it feels like a lie, because at first it will. You'll sit there trying to picture yourself confident, and the doubt will scream louder. You'll try to imagine yourself winning, and your memory of failure will try to hijack the scene. You'll try to see yourself whole, and every broken moment will beg you to stop. But that's just the old wiring, desperate to survive. Don't you stay. You breathe. You repeat. And you imagine anyway, because every time you do, you send new signals. You light up new networks. You lay down the foundation of a new belief system, not by waiting for proof, but by generating proof from the inside out. This is how identity shifts. This is how trauma dissolves. This is how freedom is rehearsed before it is realized. And don't think this is only for dreamers. Don't think this practice is for people with more time or less stress, fewer wounds. In fact, the more pain you carry, the more essential this practice becomes, because you owe it to your healing to rehearse a version of you that is no longer bound by the pain. You owe it to your future to imagine a self who is no longer sabotaging, hiding, delaying, apologizing. And if no one ever told you this before, hear me now, you have the right. You have the right to imagine a life where you are loved. You have the right to imagine a mind that is calm. You have the right to imagine a purpose that ignites your soul. You have the right to imagine a future so powerful it interrupts the past. Because once you can imagine it, you can move toward it. Not in fantasy, in biology, in every choice you make, in every word you speak, in every opportunity you once dismissed that now feels aligned. Because the moment your brain starts believing your new image, the moment the internal rehearsal becomes stronger than the old memory, your life begins to shift. Not someday. But now, I want you to understand what's really at stake. Every time you choose not to imagine your future clearly, someone else will hand you one. Every time you choose not to rehearse your higher self, your history will script your next move. Every time you refuse to interrupt the old images with new vision, your brain defaults to most familiar, not what's most empowering. But familiarity does not equal truth. Familiarity is just frequent rehearsal, and you can break it. You can interrupt the loop. You can declare, I am no longer rehearsing smallness. I am no longer imagining failure. I am no longer building a prison with my own mind. You can sit down right now, today, and begin the work. Close your eyes. Picture your highest self, how they walk, how they breathed, how they handle conflict, how they move through pressure, how they light up a room with certainty, and feel it, ankle it, even for 60 seconds. Then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, until your imagination becomes conviction, until your belief becomes reflex, until your nervous system no longer flinches at greatness. Because I promise you, this is not just visualization. It is liberation. It is how you reprogram your perception. It is how you command your physiology. It is how you teach your brain what to believe before the world agrees. Because the world will always reflect your dominant imagery, not just what you say, not just what you want, but what you repeatedly, relentlessly, emotionally imagine. So I ask you again, and I ask you from the center of this NeuroPower space. What are you rehearsing? What are you broadcasting into your brain day after day? And is it aligned with the person you know you were born to become? Because your future is not just waiting for action. It's waiting for permission from your own imagination. It's waiting for that mental rehearsal to fire so strongly, so repeatedly, so undeniably, that your brain can no longer distinguish the imagined from the inevitable. And that is wing. Let's begin with a truth that may sting before it saves it's not the massive actions that change your life. It's the smallest ones, done consistently, done consciously, done when no one is watching and everything in you wants to wait until it's easier, clearer, more convenient. But transformation does not wait for convenience. It responds to consistency. And your brain, your incredible, malleable, miraculous brain, doesn't evolve in sudden leaps. It evolves through subtle repetitions, tiny signals, invisible instructions, whispered to it day by what you do, or think, what you repeat. Your brain doesn't care about what you intend to do someday. It responds to what you do today, even if it's small, especially when it's small, because small, when repeated, becomes permanent. And permanent becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. Let me tell you something that most people never realize until it's too late-y. You are always training your brain. The only question is, what are you training it to believe? You skip one day at the gym and say, it's no big deal. You snooze the alarm and say, it's just 10 more minutes. You scroll instead of meditate and say, it doesn't really matter. But it does. It all matters because every micro decision is a message to your brain. It says, this is who we are. This is what we value. This is what we do when it gets hard. And your brain, that loyal architect of your future, rewires itself around that message. It rewires itself around what's repeated, not what's dramatic, not what's inspirational, not what's occasional. The brain is not impressed by hype. It's transformed by habits. Think about this. Every powerful transformation you've ever witnessed, every story of someone who rebuilt their life, rewired their beliefs, reshaped their identity. It didn't begin with a massive breakthrough. It began with a simple behavior. Done one day, then the next, until the repetition became a rhythm, until the rhythm became a standard, until the standard became a new normal. We live in a world addicted to instant outcomes. We want the peak without the process, the result without the ritual, the glory without the grind. But your brain doesn't build in fireworks. It builds in firewood, stacked slowly, patiently, quietly, until the fire becomes unstoppable. This is why some of you feel stuck, not because you're incapable, but because you're chasing explosions instead of igniting embers. You're waiting for motivation to strike like lightning, when what your brain really needs is the daily spark of small action. Let me tell you what science has shown us. Repeated micro habits, performed with intention, literally reshape neural pathways. They create new circuits. They override old patterns. They recalibrate the way your brain responds to stress, to success, to challenge, to change. You want to stop procrastinating. Don't wait for a new mindset. Repeat the first step every single day. You want to be more confident. Don't wait to feel bold. Repeat the courageous action every single day. You want to rewire fear into power. Don't wait to not be afraid. Repeat your movement in spite of fear every single day, because repetition is the language your brain speaks. It is the currency of neuroplasticity. It is the only thing your subconscious takes seriously. You see, the brain is an incredible pattern machine. It doesn't care whether the pattern helps you or hurts you. It just asks, how often do you feed this signal? That's it. So if you constantly repeat stress, the brain makes stress easy. If you constantly repeat hesitation, the brain makes hesitation effortless. If you constantly repeat self-criticism, the brain builds neural highways that deliver that pain to you in milliseconds. But if you start to repeat self-compassion, if you start to repeat courage, if you start to repeat the uncomfortable action and again, then the brain rewires itself around that pattern. And what was once hard becomes natural. What was once foreign becomes familiar. What was once terrifying becomes automatic. That's not motivation. That's neuroplasticity, and it's not for the chosen few. It's for anyone who dares to repeat on purpose, especially when it's boring, especially when it's hard, especially when it feels like it isn't working yet. Because the brain doesn't reward intensity. It rewards consistency. Let me speak directly to those of you who feel like you've failed. Those who've started and stopped 1,000 times. Those who've said, what's the point, when the change didn't come fast enough. Here, make every repetition counted. Every single one. Even the ones you did with doubt. Even the ones you did with trembling hands. Even the ones you did and thought. This isn't changing anything. Your brain was listening. Your nervous system was learning. Your identity was shifting. Quietly, invisibly, beneath the surface, waiting for the tipping point. And if you're not there yet, don't stop, because most breakthroughs don't come at the start. They come after the 400th repetition, when the brain finally says, this is real. This is who we are now. Let's build this into the foundation. You want a new life? Build it with bricks, not with blasts. Every thought you reinforce is a brick. Every time you act with intention is a brick. Every time you show up when it's inconvenient is a brick. And every brick matters. This is how you change your brain. This is how you change your biology. This is how you change your trajectory, not by waiting for the big break, but by breaking the loop of inconsistency, because every repetition is either a vote for your future or a vote for your past. Ask yourself right now, what are you rehearsing? What are you reinforcing? Are you repeating the excuses or the execution? Are you repeating the delay or the discipline? Are you repeating the story of powerlessness or the behavior of becoming? Because your repetition writes your identity, and your identity shapes your destiny. You don't get to build a new life with old habits. You don't get to become someone extraordinary while repeating what made you ordinary. You must repeat the unfamiliar. You must repeat the uncomfortable. You must repeat the empowering, even when your brain still doubts it, especially when your brain still doubts it, because that's the moment the wiring starts to break. That's the moment the new signal starts to override the old one. That's the moment your brain begins to say, maybe this new version is real. Maybe this is who we are now. It doesn't happen in a weekend. It doesn't happen in a course. It happens in the repetition you choose after the excitement fades. It happens when you rise at 5q100 a.m., not because it feels good, but it trains your brain to follow through. It happens when you meditate, even though your mind races, because repetition teaches it to still. It happens when you speak with confidence, even though your voice shakes, because repetition tells the brain, this is the new normal. So let's stop pretending it has to be perfect. Let's stop waiting for some mythical day when we'll feel ready. Let's stop calling failure what is simply incomplete repetition. You didn't fail. You just stopped too soon. And you can start again, right now, right here, with one choice, one step, one small behavior repeated like it matters. Because it does. That's the magic of small repetitions. They seem meaningless in the moment, but they become massive over time. Your brain is a reflection of what you do most, not what you did once. And that means every single person listening to this right now on NeuroPower Talks has the same power, the power to rewire their life, one repetition at a time, the power to outgrow their past, one behavior at a time, the power to sculpt a new identity, not through hype, but through habit. And the most incredible part, it doesn't take hours, it doesn't take talent. It doesn't even take belief in the beginning. It just takes commitment to the repetition, the courage to show up for the small thing until it's a big thing, the discipline to do it again, even when results are invisible, the wisdom to know that the invisible is always building the inevitable. So if you're tired of being stuck, repeat differently. If you're tired of being overwhelmed, repeat more simply. If you're tired of being someone you don't recognize anymore, repeat the identity you were born to reclaim. Every repetition is a vote. Every repetition is a statement. Every repetition is you saying to the universe, to your future, and to your brain, this is who I am now. Watch me prove it. Again, again, and again. And the brain, your brilliant, beautiful, programmable brain, will do exactly that, because the brain always follows the pattern. The only question is, who's creating it? So what will you repeat it? Let me ask you a question that cuts deeper than most people are ready for. If your brain is the house you live in who drew the blueprint, was it you? Or was it fear? Was it someone else's voice, louder than your own, telling you who you are, what you're worth, what you're allowed to become? Was it shame? Was it trauma? Was it a memory that should have been healed long ago, but still sits buried behind the walls of your neural architecture? Because here's what we know, not just from science, but from lived truth, every thought you think is a wire in your brain. Every belief you reinforce is a beam in your structure. Every story you rehearse about who you are, what you can't do, what always happens to you. That story becomes the scaffolding of your future. Your thoughts are not harmless. They are not invisible. They are not background noise. They are blueprints. They are architectural commands. They are biological instructions whispered directly to the cells of your brain. This is not metaphor. This is neuroplasticity. This is neuroscience, and it is non-negotiable. Your brain, with its 86 billion neurons, does not merely reflect your environment. It reflects what you think about that environment. It reflects what you tell it is true, whether it is or not. It reflects what you dwell on, whether it empowers you or destroys you. It reflects your chosen focus, because focus is the hand that draws the lines on the blueprint. You think in patterns, and patterns become pathways, and pathways become preferences, and preferences become your automatic behavior, who you show up as without thinking. So the real battle is not outside of you. It never was. It's not your circumstances. It's not your genetics. It's not even your past. It's the blueprint. It's the language you use in your own mind. It's the repetition of a thought. Long enough, often enough, until your brain says, this is law. This is the layout of our life. But here's where the power returns to you. You can redraw the blueprint. You can pick up the pen. You can reprogram the pattern. You can override what was handed to you and replace it with what you now choose. Your thoughts are not fixed. Your beliefs are not permanent. Your identity is not inherited. It's constructed. And if it was constructed, it can be reconstructed. So let me speak to the one in this room or watching this talk who's been telling themselves the same disempowering story for 10 years, Who's been living in a blueprint that someone else drew, that pain dictated, that culture reinforced? Here's your moment. Here's your rupture. Here's your line in the sand. You do not have to keep building that house. You do not have to keep reinforcing those walls. You do not have to stay imprisoned in a structure that no longer honors who you're becoming. Because the brain changes. And it changes in response to thought. When you begin to think differently, not once, not occasionally, but relentlessly, the blueprint starts to shift. The structure begins to crack open. New doors appear, new windows are framed, new perspectives are built in where old trauma once lived. And suddenly, what once felt like fate becomes flexible. What once seemed like destiny becomes design. This is the truth too many people never get told. You are not a prisoner of your mind. You are the architect of it. Every time you say, I can't, and choose to say instead, I'm learning to, you lay a new beam in the house of your brain. Every time you say, I always fail, and interrupt with, every step is building resilience. You install new lighting, clarity in the once dark corners. Every time you stop rehearsing shame and start repeating self-respect, you change the foundation. You strengthen it. You raise the standard of the structure that houses your entire life. You see, the house you live in internally, your brain, is the one you carry everywhere. Every job, every relationship, every dream, every challenge, you bring your thoughts into it. So if your blueprint is broken, everything you try to build will crack under pressure. But if your blueprint is bold, resilient, rooted in truth and intention, then you become unstoppable. You become unshakable. You become aligned with the life you were meant to design. It starts not with action. It starts with alignment of thought, because the brain doesn't just obey your actions. It obeys your instructions. And thought is the first instruction. So what are you instructing your brain to believe about you? That you're limited, that you're doomed to repeat, that you'll never be free, or that you are growing, that you are adaptable, that you are constantly rewiring every moment you think on purpose. This is the habit. This is the game changer. This is the one brain habit that rewires everything. Think deliberately, not passively, not reactively, not habitually, deliberately, because deliberate thought rewires automatic patterns, and rewired patterns reshape the course of your entire life. You cannot outsource this. No one else can rewire your mind for you. It is your responsibility, but it is also your gift. Because once you understand the power of your thoughts, you can no longer play small. You can no longer pretend that a disempowering mindset is just how I am. That's not how you are. That's how your brain was wired. And wiring can change. Right now, this very moment, your neurons are listening, waiting, asking, what thought are we reinforcing today? What blueprint are we following into tomorrow? Answer that with intention, with repetition, with the audacity to say, I'm not repeating the old plan anymore. I'm drawing a new one, bigger, bolder, freer. Because that's what's possible when you take ownership of your mind. That's what becomes inevitable when you honor your power to think, not just reflexively, but constructively. So here is where we land. Here is what I leave you with, not as a thought, but as a command to your own becoming. Draw the blueprint that builds the life your soul has been screaming for. Every thought, build it. Every word, anchor it. Every belief, reinforce it. And if it doesn't serve you, tear it down. Demolish the lies. Renovate the rooms of your mind. Install faith where there was fear. Install vision where there was blindness. Install truth where there was trauma. Because your brain will build whatever blueprint you hand it. And today, you choose what gets built. You are the architect. So build like your future depends on it, because it does. This has been NeuroPower Talks. And this is not the end. This is the beginning of a new design. Draw it with courage. Think with purpose. Rewire with intention. Because your thoughts are the blueprint, and today you hold the pen.